Burstall,
Okay,
Kevin Parks,
great.
and Disney.
Okay, thanks.
Run-in, John, just a reminder that the conference room is not muted.
Correct. Thanks.
Brenda, it's 10 o'clock. Should we get started or are we waiting for quorum?
I have 4 members present, so we need at least 1 more.
All right.
Okay, here comes Dave Wessel. So we should be able to get started momentarily.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you, Rhonda.
You can go ahead whenever you're ready, Shane.
Thank you very, very much. Good morning, Mountain Line TAC and staff. We are at the top of the hour and it is time to start our TAC meeting. So I will call this meeting to order and ask Rhonda if she could please help us with a roll call this morning.
Thank you, Chair Dilly and members of the TAC. Coconino County, Lucinda Andriani is expected. We'll make sure she's on here in just a moment. Lucinda, are you with us?
I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Coconino County Citizen Representative Julian Thomas, excused. City of Flagstaff, Shane Dilly.
I'm here.
City of Flagstaff, Kevin Parks, our citizen representative.
Present. Good morning.
Thank you. Metro Plan Dave Wessel.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. NAU Aaron Stom and Judy Maynor, her alternate, are both excused. NAU student Maylee Acosta.
Here.
Thank you. CCC Kurt Stull.
Good morning, present.
Morning. And our economic development representative, Gail Jackson. I'm unsure if Gail is on the line yet. She is expected. We have members of staff here in the training room and on Zoom, and we do have a number of guests, and I can let you know who they are. We have Chris Beecher, our Mountain Line attorney, with us.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Chris.
We have Chris, I'm not sure how to pronounce Wininger or Wininger.
Leininger.
Thank
morning.
you. Good morning. We have Jeff Bowman, here on behalf of the city of Flagstaff. He is also Chair Dilly's alternate.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Backing me up this morning, huh, Jeff?
Just in case.
I love it. Thank you.
We have Tiffany Antal from City Planning. I believe she's on, but maybe she's muted.
Hi. Sorry, I finally got that unmute to work. Thanks.
Thanks, Tiffany. We have Barney Helmick with the airport for the city of Flagstaff.
Present.
Thank you. We have Heidi Hansen from the city of Flagstaff Economic Vitality Department.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We have Cynthia Nemeth with Coconino County Parks and Recreation.
Good morning, everybody. Good to be here.
Good morning. And we are expecting, I'm not sure if he's on yet, Andrew Iacona from NAU. I believe he'll join us later on to answer any questions about an item later on the agenda. And I will turn it back to you, Chair Dilly. Thank you.
Rhonda, thank you for masterfully helping us through roll call, and welcome to all of the guests who will be participating in this morning's agenda. We'll turn some time over now to actually, I want to make a note here. We are on the cusp of some changes to our TAC membership. Want to recognize Kevin Parks, our citizen liaison or representative. Kevin has been on the TAC for 3 years. He's served both as an alternate and a member over that time. Kevin has been engaged and dedicated and has been a dedicated member, and his perspective as a writer has been appreciated. Unfortunately, this is Kevin, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is your last meeting with us. We won't be meeting in December, and we'll cover that later as a TAC group, but you're leaving the area, and I wanted to just acknowledge your service to our community, and that we're going to miss you. So thanks for being a part of our family here in our group, and for giving of your time and your talents.
Oh, thank you, Chair. You're quite welcome. And it has been a really good ride for me and Mountain Line and paratransit as well. And I especially thank the staff and especially the drivers for all the service I've gotten.
For sure. Kevin, where are you taking off to?
Well, I have even more elderly parents than myself. They're in their 90s now. They need our care and support day to day, and that'll be in Rochester, New York.
Wow, it's quite a move, but for all the right reasons, it sounds like. So again, best of luck to you and to your family, and thanks again for your service.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Well, yeah, not bye, but yeah, thanks a lot.
I meant over and out, actually.
Gotcha. Another change that we wanted to acknowledge here is happening on with the Coconino County team. Representative Lucinda Adriani and alternative Chris Tressler, they're leaving our TAC family after 5.5 years and 3 years respectively. Lucinda has served on Mountain Line on and off for many years, and in various capacities with the county. Both have served our TAC with deep commitment and excellence, I'll say, and have been supportive participants over the years. The county manager's office has seen it fit to have representation on TAC from their health and human services division, and we'll be making assignments from that group. We'll obviously miss having our more immediate connection with Lucinda and with Chris as TAC members. But we are excited and welcome with open arms the newbies to our group from Health and Human Services. That will be Tiffany Kerr and Kim Musselman. So Tiffany will be, if I understand it correctly, the member, and as an alternate, as her alternate, will be Kim Musselman from Health and Human Services. Lucinda, you're on with us this morning. I don't know if Chris is with us. I didn't hear his name, but Lucinda, thank you for all of your service to Mountain Lion and TAC. I know that will continue just a little more indirectly, and you've been a valued advocate of transit services over the many years. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Shane. And I really appreciated the opportunity, working with an organization of this level of professionalism and leadership. Have always valued the relationships and the learning and the opportunity, and big advocate of the transit system, will remain a big advocate, and certainly Heather and Kate know they can reach out at any time if there's any way that I can help support them. And I think this is a good move. Tiffany is in a position where she's working with a lot of Mountain Line's customers and people who do ride the bus every day. And I think that having that relationship and providing that input to the decision making through the TAC and in support of the supervisors, I think that sit on the board, I think that is will be really a positive. So I'm going to miss it because I've really enjoyed it. So has Christopher. He's down at a job fair today, and but I'm trying to hire people. But we both will really miss it, and of course wish everybody the best, and thank you again for the partnership.
Thank you, Lucinda. Appreciate you. That said, why don't we turn some time over to Samuel Short for a safety minute, our safety minute this morning. Thanks, Samuel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Transit Advisory Committee. The November Safety Minute is on opioid abuse. It is no secret that opioid abuse in the United States is an epidemic. While these drugs have been a problem for years now, there has been a recent national spotlight on the issue. It is important to understand how common this issue is and how abuse can affect an entire workplace. Roughly 21 to 29% of patients prescribed opioids for pain misuse them. Studies have shown that both younger and older individuals are more susceptible to opioid abuse and addiction. Most of these individuals started by using opioids by receiving a valid prescription for a valid pain issue. More than 49,800 people died from opioid overdoses in 2019 in the US, according to drugabuse.gov. It is easy to imagine how opioid abuse and the side effects it brings could have negative effects on the work of those who suffer from addiction. To prevent problems with prescription opioids, be sure to follow your doctor's instructions when taking them. Contact your doctor if you have any concerns about taking the medication. Only take the medication when it is necessary, and as soon as it no longer is needed, stop taking the medication. When done using this medication, take it to a local prescription disposal center. Many police departments have these available. Opioid abuse has affected millions of people in the United States, whether directly or indirectly. Please use extreme caution when you are prescribed opioids, and discuss your options or alternatives with your healthcare provider. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Great reminder. So I really appreciate that. We have in front of us the approval of TAC minutes for September. Do I have a motion?
This is Kevin, so moved.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I have a second?
This is Gail. I'll second it.
Thank you, Gail. Good morning to you. Are there any questions regarding the minutes? Any points of clarification? Okay. Having heard none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Hitting those mute buttons, it's kind of hard this morning.
Aye.
Thank you very much. It looks like that's passed with flying colors. We'll now move into the review of the draft board business agenda. I think at this point I turn it over to you, right, Heather?
Actually, we're going to turn it over to Kate. We'll be doing the first item, which is service to propose Northern Arizona Healthcare Campus. Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
Heather.
Chairman.
Thank you, members of the TAC. Kate Morley, Deputy General Manager. I want to start by saying thank you and welcome to the many guests we have for this topic today. This was a request of the board to hear directly from the leadership at Northern Arizona Healthcare, as well as staff at the City of Flagstaff about the entitlement process. And then they also requested to hear about interest related to the extension of the route past the airport. So appreciate everyone coming today to have that discussion. Next slide, Rhonda. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Northern Arizona Healthcare and Chris to kick us off with a presentation. And then we'll go through the other speakers after that. So thank you and welcome, Chris.
Good morning. Thank you. Next slide, please. So many have probably heard of our application back at the end of April for rezoning and entitlements related to land that has been acquired north of Fort Tutt Hill County Park. As you can see on this diagram, this outlines a very conceptual overview of what we would like to do with this property, and we'll touch just briefly on how we anticipate this benefiting the community, and then we'll turn it over to some of the other guests. As you can see here in the very center there, the purple buildings, an NAH Medical Center listed at 7 floors with an ambulatory wing. That is really what we envision as being the anchor of this entire campus. As you can see from the title here, our vision is not just simply a replacement hospital relocating the current Flagstaff Medical Center and building an ambulatory wing to it, but really a much broader, more comprehensive destination that community members in and around Flagstaff can come to with a focus around health and wellness. Increasingly, the idea of healthcare is expanding beyond just treating people when they are sick and really trying to get ahead of things, encourage healthy lifestyles, being active, making wise decisions so that we can prevent or entirely avoid the necessity of some of these more invasive and traumatic procedures just to be able to help people maintain their day-to-day life. So towards the north end here on the right in the red buildings, you'll see some things listed as a hotel as well as some commercial and mixed use. The goal around this entire campus is really to align all of those uses around health and wellness. So this would not just be any and every type of commercial or mixed use development coming in, but it would have to align with that vision of health and wellness and be moving towards that. This could include health related or health focused grocery stores, restaurants, outdoor activity type retail stores, and ultimately just trying to incorporate with that idea of getting people out and about and encouraging healthy lifestyles. We do have a couple of hotels, one up in that right segment, one towards the left in kind of the red and orange area left of the purple buildings. This is to help support the many visitors to the region, but also more specifically that come and need services at the hospital or extended care after an ambulatory visit. So this would be open, certainly not restricted to the hospital and its visitors. These would not be operated by Northern Arizona Healthcare, but we are providing that provision for additional people to be able to stay close and be able to still have care if they need it in the area. The orange area identified as clinical partnerships is really extending beyond just regular mixed use or commercial and really trying to identify whether that be independent physician practices, potentially something like a high altitude training center, could be partnerships between the academic institutions in town and Northern Arizona Healthcare, but really looking for where those synergies align between the medical care that can be delivered on campus at the medical center and other uses or extensions of that. And then on the far south side, as we get closer towards Fort Tuthill County Park, we've got that labeled as research and innovation or research and development. And this would be really a place that we could encourage partnership and development in terms of new ideas, technology, research that's going on in the health and medical fields with other employers like TGen Laboratory in town and Gore that are all centered around that medical type of advancement and technology. We think there's a great opportunity between the health system, TGen, Gore, and others to attract some of that other interest into the area. Next slide. So being a much larger campus, just short of 180 acres in total, it's important to know that what we have filed for in terms of rezoning is not intended to be fully developed all immediately. This helps to identify some of the different phasing that would take place. You can see right there in the middle in the darkest red, building 7, that would be the hospital and ambulatory platform. This would be the first and foremost development that goes on across the campus. It's important to note though that while we are only going to immediately start with development in that area, we are seeking that rezoning and entitlements for the entire campus, as it will really set the stage for attracting development partners that want to come and partner with us on this vision for the outlying phases. So to the right, you see tentative dates. Phase 1 dates are the most confident that we have, obviously working through the city process here, but showing around 2023 to 2027 for that development of a replacement hospital, as well as an ambulatory care center. Moving out from there, we would actually look to go towards the north and develop some more of that commercial and mixed use area. Not to say that there would not be any development towards the south, but that is definitely a little bit further down in our current timeline and planning. Not that could not shift over time. The important thing here to note is that we do anticipate trying to keep the most dense of the development towards the north. And as we continue to move south, seeing that development become less dense and trying to really blend more into the natural scenery as we have today, as well as being a good neighbor and partner with the county park, trying to keep it as low density as possible in that research and development area. Last slide, please. This will show a bit of a conceptual timeline that we have at this point in time. Want to call attention to kind of the top 2 segments, the city entitlements process that we are working through with Tiffany and her team, as well as many others through the city, tentatively looking to try and get in front of planning and zoning in early 2022 and in front of city council sometime late Q1, early Q2, preferably. We have started working through some of the design and pre-construction phases and tasks that we have to complete, such that if or when this gets approved through city council, that we are not starting from scratch, that we are somewhat ahead of the game and ready to move forward. Towards the bottom, we've condensed some of the subtasks under civil improvements, central plant, ambulatory, and hospital, but you can see the overall timeline there, with the most urgent of items being that ambulatory care center. And so you can see tentatively planning for construction 2023 into 2024, with the hospital then coming a bit later and not being fully complete or ready to actually move until late 2026, early 2027. The real importance here around the ambulatory care center is that there is a lack of true ambulatory services for the Flagstaff community. And this is important because it provides increasingly a more cost competitive, a more affordable solution for people who are in need of healthcare services, rather than needing to have those done in a hospital, which based on our current payment structures with insurance and whatnot, is very costly even for the patient through deductibles, rather than much lower copay co-pays that could range from $20 up to $100 instead of thousands of dollars with a deductible. So that is why we are really trying to push forward with the ambulatory care center first and foremost, but also recognizing that the core of the existing Flagstaff Medical Center is over 40 years old and in dire need of not only improvements, but also expansions to get up to proper sizing. Where if the group would like under a separate time, we can go into more depth with some of that information, but was really asked to focus on kind of the scope of the development, what we are looking to do in terms of the applications into the city and the timeline. So with that, Kate, I don't know if you want to take questions individually as we go or hold those until the end.
I think it could make sense to have an opportunity for anyone to ask questions of Chris.
TAC, any questions for Chris? It was a great presentation, Chris. Really appreciated it. Any questions for him? So Chris, in terms of public engagement, what do you have lined up? I know that there's the typical process going through the planning and zoning steps with the city. You got the commission, you've got the council. And by virtue of that, that's a very public process. But is the hospital, do you have a parallel track in terms of how you plan to engage the public in terms of information and education on this plan going forward?
Absolutely, and we are working to refine that and expand it now, obviously taking into account that more defined and structured public process. We will be having those required public participation meetings coming up towards the end of this calendar year and into early 2022, in accordance with some of the timing around those different commission and council hearings. Truth be told, we started with various, mostly focused around neighborhoods and different kind of communities within Flagstaff. Started with engagement back as early as May, meeting with different homeowners associations and neighborhood groups, really are outlining kind of the need and impetus for this in terms of delivery of healthcare. We've also been meeting with a variety of groups through the city and the county, different commissions, trying to really make sure that we're able to express the needs in terms of what we have from a healthcare perspective, but also seek some of that input. And we've been engaged with various groups within the city since as early as January 2021, trying to get feedback and incorporate various requests into how we further develop or plan this. So in short, we have been meeting. I think we're up to over 30 different groups between neighborhoods as well as commission and councils that we have been meeting with over the last 6 to 9 months, and we continue to schedule those. So if there is a request, a specific group that would like to hear more, we'd be more than happy to schedule that time.
Thanks, Chris. And I see Heidi's hand up. On this note, I just let you know, if you're not plugged into the neighborhood, the Nextdoor app, if you're not plugged into that, I would recommend just tapping that every once in a while. I have an opportunity to get in there periodically, and I'm not, I think that many have expressed concerns of not knowing what's really happening just through that app. I don't know how well that represents the sentiment of the surrounding neighborhoods, but I can tell you that there's been some concerns expressed in that app anyway. So thanks a lot. Heidi, please.
Chris, I just thought that maybe you might want to have a conversation with Barney Helmick, our airport director, at some point. We get issues all the time about noise, plane noise, and I would assume that having this village there, you're going to have a lot more of your helicopters and things like that. I think you want to address that from the onset instead of later when you've already started your development. And so I would suggest that you have a conversation with Barney, and he could give you some background and some food for thought, because if you don't have that conversation with the outlining neighborhoods at the beginning, it will end up happening at some point. Thanks.
Thanks, Heidi. Well said. And that has been a point in that neighborhood app, that Nextdoor app, Chris. concerns about flights over and helicopter interruptions and things like that. So good point, Heidi. Gail, you have your hand up.
Hi, I just wanted to give kudos to Chris and his staff. They have done a remarkable job in trying to reach out to all of the community leaders as well as neighborhood associations. I can say that from an Econa perspective, we are happy to put out a newsletter if that is helpful to your group, just explaining where you are in the process. But I will say that Chris and his group has been very amenable to giving presentations to whatever group. So if there's anyone on the call that has one, I'm sure, I hope that offer still stands because it's been great. So thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Well said. I really appreciated the presentation, Chris. A lot of good information there. So thanks again. Is that presentation available?
Yes, so your team has a copy of this. This is just a very short snippet. We were trying to keep it to about 10 minutes or so, plus questions. So certainly a lot more information. We also have a page on our website that helps to detail some things, as well as go through frequently asked questions. So as often as we get questions, we do go in and update that, adding questions to the different categories in our responses. But I appreciate the call outs here, and we will definitely get plugged in on the Nextdoor app. To at least make sure that we are aware of some of the concerns that are being raised if they're new and different from what we've heard so far, and addressing them appropriately.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Lucinda.
I just thank you, Chris. And I just want to reiterate some of the messages that you heard when you presented to the Board of Supervisors, which obviously has a really keen interest in this, obviously for community-wide, and the importance of the services, as well as, of course, the impact of Fort Tuthill. And again, the goal is, I think our mutual goal is to work together. Certainly the park serves as a wellness center in effect itself. Now, if you go out there any given day, you'll see people exercising in a lot of different ways. And so I think that we want to continue to work on that. And from a Mountain Line perspective, it is critical to the board that transit service be available to the hospital. And in doing so, hopefully that will afford transit service as well to Fort Tuthill. That would be a big enhancement for Fort Tuthill, as well as, of course, some kind of connection. Is that then part of a connection to the airport or not? And all those services through Mountain Line are extremely important to the board. So I just wanted to share that with this group so everyone is aware that those were the comments that the board really focused on, and that they, we do need to mitigate. There will be impacts to the park, and that we will work with the hospital to mitigate those, and we'll need support for that. So thank you.
Thanks, Lucinda. Any other questions or comments for Chris? Kate, I know I'd be interested in getting a copy of that presentation, and maybe Chris's contact information. And Chris, if you're open, I'd like to share some of that info in that Nextdoor app and send folks to you if you're good with that.
Yeah, let's definitely connect after this meeting, and we can talk about what the most appropriate things to be sharing on a more broad scale. I think as we think about schedules like what you see on the screen now, a lot of this is still very up in the air because we really have to get through that city process first. So I wouldn't want to incite any panic within the community that things are just moving ahead and it's already been in essence approved without formal approval.
Yeah, I think that this schedule would do a lot to abate some of the concerns. Just knowing that you're so far out, you're really at the cusp of the public process, and so I think that would go a long way to help. So
wonderful, thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. Thank you, Kate. Anything else?
Yeah, we have a couple more speakers. Rhonda, if you'll go to next slide. So the board also asked about interest in the extension of the route beyond the new hospital location to the airport and Parks and Rec. So speakers from, I've asked Heidi and Barney and Cynthia to give a very brief overview of their interest, and then Tiffany will speak briefly on the entitlement process. So we can go ahead, Heidi.
And you know, Kate, I'm going to turn it over to Barney Helmick. He has the points outlined and can speak to it. Thanks, Barney.
Thank you. I will let you know that bus service to the airport is an amenity that we've looked at for several years. At the current time, one of our biggest problems facing this is we do not generate enough revenue to cover the annual cost for this, which would require us to dip into the general fund. And the cost that we're seeing at about 1.4 million, I'm not sure that we're ready as a community to address that. Now, we do know that we're looking at the schedule that this bus service may not start even till 2027, depending on construction. I'm not sure also that our ridership would match that. We do know that our summer schedules, we're requiring people, or we're requesting people to be here at 4:30 in the morning. And the bus schedules would have to make some changes that may not work for the entire city to match that. That could mean that we'd lose 3 out of 11 flights in the morning, which would also impact the afternoon, where those people would be coming back, not necessarily on the same day, but if they don't have the ability to ride the bus, they're not going to ride it coming back. Utilizing just what we saw in 2019, and I'm not going to go into the complete math, but we'd look at a possible strong grouping of maybe 34 to 35 riders a day, dividing that out on the 20-minute times. And I believe there's a 10-hour window there. That's 30 buses, and we're looking at about 1.2 riders, which means we'd probably be looking at some empty buses through the day. And I'm not sure that that matches up. So my suggestion is that we look at a ridership study to see what it would take to make that work out, and especially at the cost that we're looking at today, which will probably go up over the next 5 years. I don't see it going down. But right now, I'm not sure that we can cover that annual cost at a justifiable number coming to the airport. It is something we want to see. We do know that there is going to be the 31.45 acre project that could increase the ridership. We also do not know what our existing business park would do that. And another piece that none of us have ever talked about is with J.W. Powell intended to go through, that could change the routing that we're looking at, which may make it more agreeable to riders beyond the airport. Questions, concerns?
No, thank you, Barney. I think we've had the conversation before agreeing that if we were to look at a service that was explicitly focused on serving the airport, it probably would look different than the extension of the NAH line. So just wanted to reconfirm that sentiment. Yeah. Cynthia, if you want to jump in, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, we've thought a lot about this and come up with a couple of pros and cons, I guess. And in terms of a pro is certainly equity, which is a big area of discussion for the Parks and Recreation industry, and providing access to all populations to park spaces, to open spaces, and the services provided therein. We've not really heard much from our park users or citizens in terms of requesting transportation to come here. We have heard it, but not to any great degree. The things that we think about is, like what happens during events. If there is bus service here, I can guarantee that there would be a tremendous interest in bus service, but would it overwhelm the system potentially for some of our larger events? So that was a consideration that we had. but it could also be a great service for some of our smaller events, right? And then also the cost. I mean, the cost to us is something, I mean, it would be nice if it came here. We would love it, but it's not something that we have funding today anyway, to support that.
Great, thank you, Cynthia, for that perspective from the County Parks Department. And then Tiffany, if you're able to speak a little bit about the entitlement process. This has been a big question for the board about what do approval processes look like and how might transit be considered as part of them?
Hi, Kate. Tiffany Antal, Senior Planner with the City of Flagstaff. We are working on several applications with NAH. Included in those applications are really two that work hand in hand. One is a minor regional plan amendment, as well as a specific plan for the overall development of the NAH campus. And then, of course, the rezoning. So most of the property today is in a rural residential zoning category. We have an area that's pretty limited in development at this point in time. So we're processing all three of those applications concurrently. At this point in time, staff is working through making those applications complete. The applications themselves require a series of impact analyses, study, including traffic impact analysis. I know that Jeff Bauman's on the line too, and he can chime in regards to traffic impact analyses. And so, you know, we're really at the early stages of really getting through those impact analyses, or even really starting the impact analysis review. And, you know, there will be a back and forth process as we work with NAH to determine what are ultimately going to be the impacts of this overall larger project, which is multi-phased. And then, of course, working through the hard part, which is mitigating those impacts. That always seems to take the most amount of time, probably the most painful for all of us. But with that being said, all three of these applications do require public hearings. They do require that citizen participation plan that Chris mentioned early in the process. They are required to have at least 2 meetings. I know that NAH has been having lots and lots and lots of meetings to date. I try to follow when I can, but it's a lot of meetings. But they will have at least two formal neighborhood meetings. We've got a really big boundary. Doing things electronically, we're probably going to have to split those into different meetings, just even to incorporate what we want to see for those neighborhood meetings. We have not yet approved their citizen participation plan. So that, again, is still something we're working through as part of the application. But like I said, there will be those two. Hopefully we have one that's early in the process, maybe, you know, as we're just getting into the substantive review of the application, which really haven't started yet. And then one at the end where we can really, the NIH can really go back and communicate to the community. This is what this application is bringing to the table. These are what the requirements are going to be. So again, like I said, we're still pretty early on in the application review. The specific plan itself is going to do multiple things. So let me back up. The minor regional plan amendment, this particular area is covered by an activity center. That activity center is what's called a neighborhood activity center. But because the proposed use is such a regional facility, they were asked to do a minor regional plan amendment to take that neighborhood activity center and make it a regional activity center. Regional activity centers and both neighborhood activity centers are places where density and intensity of uses are focused. They're also intended, per the regional plan, to be served by transit. So once there's the minor regional plan amendment, then there is the specific plan. The specific plan is a little bit different than maybe some of the more recent specific plans you've seen come through the city. So there are the specific plans that the city performs and completes itself that become extensions of the regional plan and serve as a policy document. Then there are the specific plans that primarily serve a private development project. As part of a specific plan, they can either be adopted by resolution or they can be adopted by ordinance. If a specific plan is adopted by ordinance, it can amend zoning parameters, it can amend land uses, it can act as its own little sort of zoning code for a development site. In this case, this is a specific plan that is proposed to be adopted by ordinance, and there are provisions to accommodate what is a different and unique use. We currently only have one hospital. And when NAH is looking at that new facility, they're looking at a building that's probably going to exceed our building heights. They're going to need special parameters in order to accommodate that hospital building. And lastly is the rezoning. The specific plan will also help support policy-wise the rezoning, but most of these things, and all three of these items are going to run concurrent with one another. The thing about a specific plan, though, is that a specific plan also requires additional public input and comment. It does have to go out for a 60-day comment period before we can hit public hearings. So the likelihood that right now we're going to hit, I love the optimistic that we're going to hit that first quarter, but just even alone with once we have the specific plan complete, we're still looking at a 60-day period of review before we can hit those public hearings. The rezoning itself, always, of course, is by ordinance. And the rezoning is specific to 3 findings. Those findings include the first and foremost is always compliance with the regional plan. So in terms of transit, we're really going to be focusing on the fact that this is an activity center and that activity centers are intended to be served by transit. Of course, the regional plan didn't intend this area to grow within this particular time frame. Again, we're just on the cusp of having to start that, and we are starting the update to a new regional plan. So while the previous plan adopted in 2013 didn't highlight the fact that transit would be in this area, we also didn't anticipate or see development at this point in time moving to that area. The second finding is about public health, safety, and welfare. That finding is really general and broad. And the idea of social equity is something that's really growing in terms of planning and zoning. It's something we all have our eyes on and how we are working with our greater community. To me, this particular condition also hits on those social equity components, which again, transit is a social equity issue. The last finding for rezoning has to focuses on the developability of the site. Is that site really ready? Is it right? What is necessary to support that development? And can the site support that development? And again, transit falls into this finding as well. It's part of that overall transit or transportation network. So you can see that the discussion about transit is something that fits into all of the findings for rezoning. Staff will be working with NAH. We have encouraged them that staff feels that transit is really important to make the findings. At the end of the day, staff makes recommendations on all of these findings. And it is the final decision is City Council. There will be an intermediary recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. But in terms of the work we've done so far, and at the high level we're at yet, we still have a lot of work to do to get into those smaller details to see how transit can even be incorporated into the development site. Because again, we're looking at those really high level issues at this point. And I hope that's enough information. I hope I covered it well. I hope it didn't go on too long, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No, Tiffany, that was perfect. I think that answers a lot of the questions that the board has about the process. So thank you. Rhonda, will you move to the next slide? So just as a reminder, we've been working on this for some time and worked hard on what the costs of providing this service would be, looking at the big component, the annual operating costs at one point to almost $2 million. And then capital costs associated with that, where we can actively write grants and try to bring those capital costs down. We're very willing to do that. The costs in front of you are in the map show a route that would only extend to NAH. Next slide, Rhonda. But we've also done the calculations if there was an interest in extending to Fort Tot Hillman onto the airport. You can see that cost goes up to $1.4 million annually. And then there's some additional capital costs. Again, we can really write grants for a lot of those. Next slide. And so we have talked with the board about some of the funding options that we see possible. We have a couple different ones, really depending upon the interest of the city council for how this might be done. But the punchline is that we have plugged this service into our financial plan, and we are not able to add this route without dropping below our required fund balance. There is a potential other option on here, which is to include it as part of a sales tax. Or an additional ask for a sales tax. We have not included that in the recommendations because it's such a big if, and the timing of the increase in a sales tax is beyond what the what NIH is looking for an entitlement process. I think in the future, we're very open to a discussion about shifting the funding of the route to a sales tax if that is supported by the voters. But until the time there is that support from voters, it just doesn't feel like a sustainable or reliable option for doing that. And so that's why that's not on the list right now while you see these other scenarios in front of you. Next slide. And so with that, that's the end of our presentation. And happy to turn it back to you, Chair, for any questions and comments.
Thank you, Kate. Are there any comments or questions for Kate at this time? Give everybody a second to think about that. But Kate, I do have a question. Can you go back to the previous slide on options? Have you considered the option of reprioritizing and seeing how a new route out to the hospital and potentially to the airport lines up with other existing demands? I know in one of your either your memo or your staff report, you mentioned Route 8, and I think there was something else that you mentioned, but I'm not sure if I'm missing it in these options. But do you list that as a potential for the board to consider reprioritizing so that perhaps if the NIH service does rank higher than other things, that's reprioritized and funded that way? Thanks.
Yeah, that's intended to be covered under number 4 and not staff's recommendation, though the board could definitely consider that. There's some reasons why. So one, Route 2 is the primary route that serves the current hospital. It's 20-minute service. We implemented that, I think, around 2018. It might have been sooner than that, but it wasn't that long ago that we added an extra bus to that route to bring it from 30 minutes up to 20-minute service. When we did that, the ridership increased 30%. It also serves Title VI neighborhoods as it heads east. And so it's not just a service that's solely focused on the hospital. It's really serving some low income areas. So reducing service also has federal requirements associated with it. You can't just pull service from a Title VI community without a significant public process, and then also showing the federal government why that was an equitable decision to make. So if you look at a map of equity or some of the components of Title VI in the community, you would see Route 5 that extends to Cheshire probably touches on the least number of Title VI communities. However, there's only one bus that runs that route. So from the Title VI perspective, Route 5 might be something we would look at. But if we were to pull service off Route 5, that community would lose its bus service entirely. And there are a number of people who use it. It does serve Fala. It serves the Thorpe Loop and the Senior Center. So it's definitely, while not our highest ridership route, meeting some basic equity needs. We've also talked about Route 10. That's the one through campus because it has the most buses on it. So pulling a bus off of that would have the least impact in terms of how long people have to wait or the usability of the route. However, those buses tend to be quite full. Even though they are articulated buses, they can still be jam-packed. And so the idea of pulling a bus off of that one starts to impact our ridership and therefore some of our stick funding measures. So it is possible to consider reallocation from other routes. Unfortunately, we're just not a system that's large enough where it's easy to move buses around without significant impacts because we're just not that big. So that's staff's recommendation is that we would not do that, though it is something the board could consider.
Great, Kate, thanks. Obviously, you guys have put a lot of thought into that. You had referenced Route 8 in your staff report. Did you cover Route 8 in your explanation just now?
I did not. I'd have to go back and see what I wrote. I might have misspoke if I talked about Route 8. Route 8 is also served really with one bus, and we're trying to extend Route 8 out to Woody Mountain Road. That was a promise all the way back to 2008 in some voter maps as the extension of Route 8. So we're actually trying to increase service over there rather than decrease it. And by extending, again, it means you have to add an additional bus. You have to add an additional bus to keep that service. I think we did talk about Route 8 and the fund balance. That was what was in the staff report. And we have tried to hold space in there for an extension of Route 8 to the best we can because of that 2008 voter map that did show the extension of that service. So I think the reference, I believe, was related to the fund balance, but not something we talked about reducing service on.
I believe you're right. Okay, well, thank you, Kate. Again, obviously well thought through, and I appreciate the minute or two you've taken to explain that. Are there any other questions for Kate on this very exciting project for the community? Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Kate, I know I've asked this before, but I think it's worth beating into my head one more time at least. So you're recommending 20-minute service. Do costs go down considerably if that is 30-minute service? And just as perhaps as a context, I look at the existing hospital, and even when service was introduced there, it was a mature neighborhood surrounding the hospital. So there's residential areas, there's shopping centers, there's related medical uses. And all those were present at the time service was introduced there and contribute to the demand. So is it reasonable that you would start with a lower level of service at opening for the hospital and increase frequency over time as those supporting services and surrounding developments come into existence?
Yeah, I think yeah, thanks for the question. It is possible. I think just for rough math, if you look at those operating costs, it would go down by 1/3 to go to 30-minute service instead of 20-minute service. It's a 60-minute route, so we're just doing math there, but there's 3 buses on that, and that would go to 2 buses to do 30-minute service. So I think, so the 5-year plan really the current 5-year plan identifies frequency as a major goal and really trying to get everything to better than 30-minute service. So that's part of the recommendation. The current hospital has Route 2 every 20 minutes plus the hourly Route 5 service. So approximately 15-minute service. So it's not that spread out in quite that same way. So I think for us, we are focused on, from that equity perspective, the ease of using a route is very important. And we feel like 20-minute service typically is just much easier for people to plan their lives around than 30 minutes. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is much more difficult when the bus doesn't come as often. If you if you recall, the image that we always used about frequency was the gate across the driveway. And if at your house, the gate only opened every 30 minutes and you had to have your car there ready to drive out at that single second, or else you were going to have to wait the next 30 minutes. That's very difficult. And that's the importance of frequency. 20 minutes gives you a lot more. It doesn't sound like much more. It's only 10 minutes. It's a lot more options over the course of a day if it's 20 minutes. But it is an alternative, is to look at that. But I think the key piece about developing over time is that we really feel that it's not the future phases that trigger the need for transit in the same way as it's the hospital is that core piece that triggers the need for transit.
Okay, thank you.
All the same, Kate, I think while you're showing numbers associated with the 20-minute intervals or service, having it in your speaking points that there are other considerations that could be made for a 30-minute or what have you, and building in, I think to Dave's point, that might be worthwhile to interject into your speaking points. Any other questions for Kate? Okay. Thank you, Kate. Again, really appreciate that and all the work that's gone into providing these options. Obviously, a lot of decisions to be made over the next little while in support of this very important project for the community. So thank you. Moving on. We're going to jump into transit tax discussion, and Heather, this one is yours, right?
It is. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the goal today and with the board this month is just to provide an overview of where we're at with transit tax, where that funding can take us, where that funding won't take us, and really what does the board want to do next. The hopeful deliverable from this is the board provides clear direction to us, whether it's to go ahead and notify the city for the 2022 ballot that we wish to be on it, or start to create a message that we want to wait till 2024 and what that might look like. Next slide. So our current tax, this was a 2008 tax question that was a renewal of our 2000 taxes, and we expanded it for capital, but not for inflation. That tax, as it says here, was renewed in 2016. The use of the transit tax has grown from $3 million annually to $5.3 million annually in that same period of 2016 renewal to today. That's a 70% growth in the transit tax needs for operating. And I've put a few things on the screen that are contributing to that. We are currently spending about 83% of the annual taxes that we receive through those sales receipts from the city of Flagstaff that is being spent on operating. So that leaves us about 17% for future programs and capital match. Next slide. This is our list of items on our expansion, call it our Christmas wish list, if you will. The Downtown Connection Center, when it's implemented, increase our cost by $100,000 annually. If we move forward with Route 8, and I appreciate Shane's comment that that's not set in stone, would increase our annual operating by $255,000. Transition to battery electric fleet, which was part of the adoption of our ZEB transition plan, is an increase of $200,000 annually, and that's related to the charging that we must do throughout the day. And if we do the route as proposed with 20-minute frequency to Northern Arizona Healthcare, that's a new cost of $1.4 million annually. Next slide. And I will just recognize that Flagstaff in Motion is not complete, and there could be other things that come out of that plan as well. This is from last month's presentation by AECom, and I want to recognize that anything on the list of funding options that has words like tax and bonding must actually be approved or enacted by one or more of our partners. Mountain Line cannot actually, we don't have taxing authority nor bonding authority. Some of these ideas that we're exploring, they are going to take time for us to develop a recommendation to understand what are the impacts, but these are the various ideas that we are looking at and exploring. Next slide. So as mentioned in the staff report, some of our considerations related to timing is that the Flagstaff in Motion plan is not complete. So we don't have a service scenario ready. We have less than 12 months. If we decide to go in 2022, we have less than 12 months to really explore the options on the previous slide. And that focus on exploring those options will be tapped with resources, because really we need to then switch our focus to our education campaign and our very specific message around a question in 2022. And then we know that the ballot may be heavier than usual, in part because 2020 ballot measures were deferred to 2022 and beyond. So as noted on the slide, 2022 is right around the corner. If we waited till 2024, we would have more time. The one consideration about waiting till 2024 is that it does put a question about expansion right up against a potential question in the following ballot to renew those taxes. Just as a reminder, the existing 2016 tax does expire in 2030. Next slide. So really all of this information is being provided to create the opportunity for a discussion about what is the appropriate timing for us to consider moving forward to ask for a transit tax question from the city of Flagstaff. And a brief reminder, it was on the last slide and I didn't really speak to it, is the city has indicated that if we want to move forward in 2022, we do need to let them know that soon. And so we feel like we're really needing to make this decision pretty quickly, especially about 2022. So Chairman Deli, that's everything that I have related to this item, because really what we wanted to do was have a robust discussion about what do we want to do as an agency and how do our members feel.
Heather, I guess I'll start. Thank you for the presentation. I know that your board is going to really appreciate that as well. This is probably fresh on their minds as that was part of the discussion at the advance last month. And so, yeah, I'm sure they'll appreciate it. Before I ask for questions from the TAC group, Heather, what kind of information or input from the TAC would be helpful to you as you prepare for this discussion with your board?
So I will first share some concerns that I have with really doing this presentation timed now is we don't have a lot of information. So I don't have a specific ask to the board. I don't have we need another 20 cents in taxes because we haven't finished Flagstaff in Motion to tell us what some of those 5-year transit plan items will be. We have the items that I listed, which are items that we've been talking about, the zero emission buses, the Route 8, the Northern Arizona Healthcare, and we're already committed to the Downtown Connection Center. So I guess I'm looking for the professional opinion of those around this table to help us kind of tease out what are concerns with right now moving forward to 2022, other than probably the things that I just stated. But what would be the benefits of waiting until 2024 in your professional opinions? And are there concerns about us going back 2 years in a row as members?
Thank you, Heather. And I appreciate you accepting that opportunity to clarify what you're looking for. Members of the TAC, what kind of feedback or input can you offer Heather as staff prepares for this discussion with the board? Lucinda.
So thank you, Heather. And obviously there's a lot of considerations, but just in terms of preparation for the discussion with the board, I would lay the timeline out. I know for me, as you walk through it, I was thinking backward and forward. And I think to lay it out in a graphic or something would be really helpful, because like knowing when does something expire, and then of course you want to go before that. So you have an opportunity to go twice if you need to, right? All of that, or the different measures, I think would be really helpful to have some kind of visual of that. Because that's where my mind's going. And would it actually make sense to put both measures on the ballot? Or not? Does that make sense? And or do you need two measures? Can you consolidate to a measure? Is that legally possible? And what could that look like? Now, I know that'll strain the budget for some period of time, but you did get CARES Act and you're getting ARPA money too, right?
Yes, we did get ARP money.
So I think that, thinking about that as a strategy overall, like you've actually had okay success asking for more than, having more than one initiative on a ballot, but consolidate, and then the timeline of having them on the ballot at the same time. I mean, going back repeatedly does feel different to people, I think. So that's one piece. I think the other piece is when will you finish the 5-year plan, the Fly Staff in Motion? What's your timeline for that?
I think Kate is still on the line. I get my dates of all these projects a little confused.
I think we're aiming for February, right?
Okay. So that still would allow, as long as you kind of hit that target to have, you're going to bring in a citizen committee or some other type of process to get input on this. You want that at least in pretty darn good shape, pretty close to final before you start that conversation with them, and then ultimately the community, because that obviously is going to be really critical. And then on the current budget costs, you picked out the labor costs, which is, significant increase. And I would show your other cost increases and show some level of budget, like, here's the financial need, here's where we're going. If we escalate those, even at, more normal escalation rates, and you might want to do two scenarios, a higher escalation rate of what we're experiencing right now. And then a lower, one that's more moderated, thinking that things may moderate. But I think to look at that, to give them kind of a worst case, best case, worst case kind of financial target that because you got to have big numbers. They're going to be big numbers. So you're going to make a good case, but to show them that case. And then just my curiosity is the $21.06 per hour wage for the drivers. Is that your entry? Is that your average? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so both of the wages that I showed is our entry wage. We did just increase that at the beginning of October through a board action. We gave all staff a $3 an hour pay increase in hourly positions. So that changed our operations family to move all of their wages. We do have a training wage. So if somebody comes in with no CDL and no experience, we have some under wages below the 2106, but they move to that 2106 within 6 months of starting, roughly.
Assuming they get their CDL.
Correct.
Perfect. Yeah, makes sense. Great.
Well, thank you for that input. That was very helpful.
Thoughts, off top right here, I think that's some thoughts. And then of course, the other piece to this is the ongoing conversation of who is going to have measures on the ballot in 22 and possibly 24. And I do think it's likely, that the county is looking at some potential measures, and we can talk offline about what those might be, but at least one measure, possibly two measures. So I think that's something we could talk about offline. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucinda. Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Heather, this is a great conversation. It's certainly timely to be having it. And I think, the presentation at the advance on the fund balance with the addition, with and without the addition of the Route 8 extension has some bearing here. And I'm wondering if it's reasonable on that Christmas wish list to assign a tax rate needed to achieve each of those things and maintain your desired fund balance. So I think you can at least start giving the board a sense of scale of what you might ask for, knowing, yes, the 5-year transit plan may add to that list, but that's at least a starting point. The other thing that is kind of churning in my head in terms of future elections is, how is, the regional transportation plan and the regional plan following on that going to drive expectations for transit and what you might be asking for in the future. We're looking at possibly calling for higher densities, considerably higher densities, and considerably more transit service to meet those goals. And boy, if we don't know what the 5-year transit plan is going to deliver in February, I sure don't know what the what these other plans are going to call for. And so, maybe there's, it's just thinking out loud, maybe there's enough uncertainty associated with those now that that maybe earlier action might be warranted, because you can anticipate these costs on your Christmas wish list, and there's a lot of thinking to be done between now and 2026. So thank you.
Okay. May I ask a follow-up question, Advisor Wessel? The RTP timeline, do you know what that is, or can you provide what that is?
Yeah, we want to essentially have it complete in October of next year and adoption by December.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Gail, I saw your hand up, but then it got put down. Do you have a comment or a question? Don't know if Gail is still with us or not. Gail, listen, if you do need to jump in, have at it. So Heather, really appreciate this. I know that your staff report references some of my comments a couple of times. I would like to work with you a little bit on the wording to make sure that it does accurately reflect where I was trying to go in my recommendations. I was trying to be as neutral as possible in the sense that if the board was wanting to, felt like we needed to consider a ballot question on the 22 election, that there is a sense of urgency, and we need to make sure that we're getting that word out to the city council and to the community as quickly as possible. So that's the sense of urgency, because we've got a lot of things in play as a city. And so, I mean, even as early as this, as recent, I guess, as this past Tuesday, the council took up continued conversation on the 2022 election potential. I'll state here that there were concerns expressed by the city council about not spending the WAD. So there's $100 million of debt potential there, and it was pretty clear, at least to staff at last Tuesday's conversation, this past Tuesday conversation, that the council didn't have an interest in completely depleting that debt capability at this election. So I don't know where that sweet number is going to land, but it's clear to staff that they're looking at public safety, stormwater, and housing, I think. Now, there are other items that are being presented and vetted through the bond committee. And so last Tuesday's conversation was not the end all be all. It didn't provide true direction. It wasn't intended to either. So it's just the beginning of those conversations. But if the board feels like they need to hit the 2022 election, the urgency is we need to get that out there. Now, getting to my other comments that I don't know were being reflected here in the staff report, knowing that the Flagstaff in Motion effort is not completed, knowing that the RTP work with MetroPlan is out there into 2022 before being completed, and knowing that largely the feedback we got from the public in our 2018 run for a bond question was all about communication. My personal take on all of this is that we would be better served as a transit service in taking the 2024 slot, because we have those things now in our pocket. I'm thinking Flagstaff in Motion, I'm thinking the RTP study, and we have time to make sure that the city, the county, the colleges, the school district have been well noticed that Mountain Line is taking a run for 2024. In other words, we're better positioned to address that communication issue if we were to run for 2024. And then we know that we have the ability to be on a 2026 ballot if for some reason 2024 wasn't successful, as a safety net. We operate that way as a city, try to get out there one election before so that we have a backup if we need to. I just think there's a lot of sense in seriously considering that 2024 election, and I did make those comments during the advance in October. So I would appreciate that that the staff report reflect those comments if my name's going to be put out there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Heather? Advice and strategy and how she can approach this discussion with the board. Okay. Heather, do you have some of the input that you were hoping for?
I do, absolutely. And I have some notes that I may reach out to individual members to follow up on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. And thanks, TAC members, for that feedback. Okay. Where are we at? We are down to the Connection Center update. So we'll turn some time back over to Kate and look forward to the update. Thanks, Kate.
Hi, thank you. So just wanted to provide an update to TAC and board because we are in the process of finalizing our conditional use application with the city of Flagstaff and want to show TAC and board what it is we're proposing. as a part of that. So ideally, our application will be approved and finalized this Friday, which would put us in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission on December 8th. Next slide. So the slide in front of you shows the site plan for the site that we've submitted to the planning for consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission. You can see that we really have worked hard over the past couple of months to try to balance the parking area along with the civic space and have both available within the master plan of the site. Of course, the primary component that Mountain Line is most interested in is that building and the bus bays, but we're very excited about delivering an overall master plan that works for the community and reflects community goals. So we believe that what's in front of you has done that. There is some space for Mountain Line to grow over time in those bus bays. We currently use about 11 slots during Mountain Express. Then during so there'd be 2 extra slots that we could partner with groups like Hopi Phenom Transit or Greyhound, the Flixbus, those types of things. Over time, Mountain Line may grow to fill all those spaces, but that slot, you can see there's a bump out on Phoenix Avenue right by the bus space that could accommodate tour buses or those intercity groups in the future if needed. Next slide. We also wanted to share the latest renderings of the building with you. We've modified a couple things based on the public feedback that we had last month. Some people really loved the modern architecture of the building. Others wanted to see us bring in some more historic elements. So what we've done is we've put a stone on the building instead of a brick to bring in some of those more traditional elements, and expanded the roof line to provide some additional shade over the entryway was another comment that we got. So this is the view from the bus bays looking in. That's obviously the main entryway where we're greeting customers from. We did attempt to try for more of a universal design access into the building than what you see here. The ramp for ADA is separate from the stairways, and we were looking for a way to merge that entranceway so that all users have the same approach. Unfortunately, because the building is elevated because of the floodplain, there's not enough room to just have a straight ramped up access. And so you do see the 2 separate access ways, and we want to acknowledge that we have tried but aren't able to accommodate that request. Next slide. And then this is the view from Milton looking northeast towards the building. While this is the back of the building, we've been conscious in our design to make it look like the front of a building. We haven't placed signage on these yet, so that'll be another element to help make this look like more of the front of house instead of back of house. But that wide open stairway is meant to show that entryway in and bring that forward. Other elements that we think are really key is a lot of natural light for health in the building. And then the roof element is not actually wood, the soffit of the roof, but it will look like this big wood timber soffit that people have responded to very well. So we're excited about that. And I believe that's all I had for slides, really just wanting to share the visuals. I think the other thing we wanted to talk about is what's happening with parking on the property. So the zoning code suggests that we could get a reduction of parking to about 20 spaces due to our proximity to transit and many other things we're doing for transportation demand management. However, the site only has so much room for parking on it. We anticipate it to be about 100 spaces, but none of that has been through final design yet. So don't want to get too locked into that, but that's the current estimate. We through that so there's about 100 spaces. If we were to take 20 spaces and dedicate them to Mountain Line, which is what the zoning code suggests, we don't actually believe that's in the best interest of the community. We would like to see all available parking be to the benefit of Park Flag and believe that that's in the best interest of the community because Park Flag can make revenue off of all those spaces that then they can put into their long-term parking plans downtown. This means Mountain Line staff who wanted to drive to the site would have to pay Park Flag parking fees. We believe that's in line with the transportation demand management items that we do here at Mountain Line anyway, so we're happy to role model that through this project for the community. That will require the approval of the city council. Even going to the 20 spaces would require the approval of city council, but then having no dedicated spaces and just using the park flag spaces also will take the approval of council. So we'll be curious to see what their answer on that is. There's some additional benefit to Mountain Line there in that northern area is meant to be the portion of the property that the Riota flag is staging off of for the longest period of time. So it allows Mountain Line to move forward with its project, expend its grant, get that closed out, so that way we're in a better position to seek future grants from the Federal Transit Administration rather than still delaying on closing this one, which would be something that wouldn't look good for us in writing those future grants. So a good benefit for us there. The other piece that we'll have to work through with the City of Flagstaff as we move into the IGA. So that approval process would happen through the conditional use permit and approval through this City Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. We then still have to go back to City Council for an IGA once our NEPA process is complete, probably February or March at this stage. That process will also have us negotiating over the displacement of the parking on site. We have, that is an eligible expense of the grant, is to pay for the displacement of uses that are impacted by the development. So we'll be negotiating on the specifics of that as we move forward as well. So I think those are the big items. We're very excited. We do think that this project has found a really nice balance of the South Side desire for the civic space, the downtown businesses desire for retaining as much parking as possible on what is a very constrained site. So we hope that the community sees it that way, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. With that, Rhonda, if you'll go one more slide. Yeah, that's the end of my PowerPoint, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kate. Any questions for Kate on the Downtown Connection Center update? Yes, Heidi.
Kate, so when you say that you would pay for parking, you're just talking about the $10 a month employee permit is what you would suggest that Mountain Lion employees would purchase?
Well, I actually just had this conversation with Dave McIntyre the other day where we were anticipating employees would use the pay by hour parking, and Dave reminded me that there was a cheaper rate for them. So yes, I think for those that wanted to use the $10 parking pass, that would be great. But for people who didn't want to use that, then they'd be paying the regular park flag rates, which is what we had anticipated.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the employees knew there's a better rate and one that's more cost effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave reminded me of the same thing.
Thank you, Heidi. Any other questions for Kate?
It's a beautiful building.
Man, I'm loving the building, Kate. I mean, that I love the stonework. I didn't see that in previous renderings, so that's definitely an update, and I think it looks great. That's my personal opinion. Kate, any word from ADOT on the on-street parking? Any insight that you can offer there?
Yeah, so we're working through the TIA process still with ADOT. We really want to retain those 5 spaces near the connection center. The question is whether or not ADOT will let those remain or require it to be an extension of the right turn lane. We have talked with the district engineer to explain the parking issue and the importance of parking in that, and hope, because our engineers do believe that it's feasible to have the shorter right turn lane, and that's not a fatal flaw or an issue. It may not be the ideal traffic scenario that ADOT would like, but is safe and is feasible. And so we are trying to remind the North Central District that the parking is a priority, and we'll see how that goes.
Okay, thank you. And any expectations, or can you manage expectations on when you guys would be ready to put out a new timeline?
Yeah, so what we're hoping for right now is if everything is accepted by the city by Friday for the conditional use permit, that'll really drive our timeline. That would put us in front of Planning and Zoning Commission December 8th. Likely, I'm guessing due to the holidays, we would not be to City Council until early January at this point, though depending on council's agenda, I guess it is possible end of March. Once we do that, we can submit our NEPA to FTA. We anticipate that to take about 6 weeks. After our NEPA is approved is when we can begin truly negotiating the intergovernmental agreement with the city. So in a best case scenario, I think that that's in March. And once that's all agreed to, then we are able to start site work and demo the existing building, put up our temporary space and get going. So I would say a best case scenario is really probably shovels in the ground by June, assuming everything goes perfectly between now and then.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kate. Again, great renderings on that building. Were we able to address the setback issue on that roof line?
So the setback issue is something, the building has been moved out of the setback. There is the very highest portion where it comes out over the bus plaza is something that would be in the right of way and would potentially need an easement for. So I believe our design team is talking to Tiffany about whether or not that's feasible. If not, we can just cut that roof line back. I think, if we can do it, great. It was a request to have more shade over that plaza. And if not, we can just pull it back again.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Very exciting. Thanks, Kate. And I know it's been just a Herculean effort dealing with all the complexities on that parcel. It just goes to show how passionate you and your team are in terms of this location for the Downtown Connection Center. And so, sorry about the frustrations. I know that there's been many along the way, but it's really turning out to be a really beautiful project. So thanks a lot. Okay. No other questions or comments for Kate. Heather, I think we turn it back over to you for item 4.
Great. And I will just recognize for everyone that we have about 23 minutes left. So Sam and I are going to speed present these last 2 discussion and action items and can always bring them back around if there are unanswered questions. We do want to leave about 5 minutes at the end of the meeting for quick current events and close out of the meeting. So with that said, I'm going to present briefly on recruitment and retention strategies, and I will acknowledge that this item was taken to the board of directors in a special meeting in early October. And this is my first presentation to you, the Transit Advisory Committee, on those items. If anybody would like a copy of the staff report that was presented or the presentation, I would be happy to send those out to you after this meeting. So we presented to the board, next slide, Rhonda, we presented to the board in early October that we were in crisis mode for both recruiting and retaining our staff. And we brought forward a bevy of different things that we were looking at staff. The big reason we brought it to the board is we did need board approval to give everyone a pay raise. But we didn't want to just focus on pay, so we have introduced a number of other ways that we are looking to improve both our recruitment and our retention processes. So here before you on the screen are some of the new recruitment tools that we have developed. These are now available on our website and throughout our community. And I'll just say these may be slightly different than the final versions because this is what was originally drafted. Next slide. Other items that we adjusted within our recruitment is that we are now attending Coconino Community College's CDL training class. They have a class that starts about every 3 weeks, and has about 8 students in it. Currently, we have 3 students that we're looking to hire. In fact, 2 of them started today. And so we're working those, there's multiple typos here, I apologize. There's multiple staff involved in getting those staff on as quickly as possible. We also developed a recruitment video. So one of the concerns is that our operations division is really tapped on resources. If a driver is calling out sick, we are sending managers out to drive those routes. So we've looked for new ways to have HR and other team members participate in the recruitment process. And I'm going to show you briefly a recruitment video that was developed for CCC specifically.
Working in Flagstaff as a Mountain Line bus operator is always a smart career move.
I got into the teaching program at NAU.
Well, I had lost my job after 28 years. This job to me really was a blessing.
Mountain Line has given me the flexibility to actually take courses full time and have that downtime with family.
Said you told me 5 years ago that I would have ended up my working career driving a bus, I probably would have told you were crazy. But it's been great. It's a well-paying job. The benefits are wonderful, and so that's something that's always been very important to me. The guys that are running the training program, they're very, very good.
And they make it really easy for you.
I really enjoy the people I work with. Feels like family.
I just like talking to people, help them get to where they're going. I feel like I'm making a difference.
So if you want to drive my ride, apply today
At mountainline.az.gov.
Mountain Line is an equal opportunity employer of the Northern Arizona Intergovernmental Public Transportation Authority.
Congratulations on getting your CDL license. I would like to invite you to check out Mountain Line Transit right here in Flagstaff with a job that would fit your schedule. We'll train you to drive our buses here, and it'll be fun, rewarding, exciting, and very reliable for a new career.
So some of you may recognize portions of that video. This was a build out of a video that we already had called Drive My Ride. We've added the additional segment specifically for CCC students. We've also worked with Arizona Snowball to introduce a new benefit, seasonal or for ski passes for both current and seasonal staff that help provide that service. And lastly, we're hosting our first job fair here at Mountain Line next week, and I'm going to play the radio spot that is currently running on different stations and through our social media.
Looking for a job where you can make a difference and get excellent pay and great benefits? Join the Mountain Line team as a transit driver. Swing by our job fair on Tuesday, November 9th from 10 to 3 at 3773 North Caspar Drive to learn more about our flexible schedules, paid training, and even do an initial interview. Visit www.mountainline.az.gov/jobs for a full list of available jobs. Drive your way to a rewarding career with Mountain Line.
So this is just a brief glimpse at a few of the measures that we're using. There was a more descriptive list in the staff report. Next slide. And as mentioned, we did look at how are we retaining folks. And so at the time that we presented this, we were 10 full-time positions short. We had 5 staff members threatening to quit. Since changing our pay, as I said, we gave everyone a $3 pay increase, and that includes our recruitment wages. All 5 of those staff have confirmed that they are no longer looking for positions. We've had more than a dozen applications after 6 months of ones and twosies. And we have 8 recruits right now that we are looking to onboard and hire for our training to start November 15th. One other strategy we've implemented is if you've been hired, you can come to work now. We don't ask you to wait for our training class, and we're getting people on board as soon as possible, doing platform duties, extra board duties, being a bus ambassador, and learning our routes. Next slide. And the last measure and a part of our staffing strategies is to make sure everyone who has a CDL can step into a driving position. And so we've worked hard to cross-train folks in the office to help cover some of the office duties and ensure that all CDL trained staff can be out in the vehicles. The goal was to reduce the amount of overtime and the burnout that we were seeing amongst our driving staff. And we are right now developing a second chance on change policy that would allow us to rehire prior staff who left without notice or left for reasons that were not considered negligent or safety related. Next slide. And the last measure that we have put into place is we have reduced some service on Route 10 specifically. We did evaluate the impacts to our riders as part of making this decision. So we have been running only 4 buses since really March of 2020 on Route 10. We recently cut back to 3 buses on Friday, and 3 buses from 10 to 2 on Fridays, with only 2 buses at the other times. And this continues to meet the peak demand on that route, but allow us to reserve staffing demands outside of the peak demand for ridership. And then we also changed our peak hour Monday through Thursday, which again conserves some of our staff demand. So this was, again, supposed to be a brief update on measures we've put into place to try and improve recruitment as well as retention and stop some of the burnout and overtime amongst our staff members. Rhonda, I think that was my last slide. And with that, Chair Dilly, I am complete on this item, but I'd be happy to go over any items, or of course we can bring it back at a future meeting as well.
Any comments or questions for Heather? Thank you, Heather, for this update on your recruitment efforts and strategies. Hearing none, I really enjoyed the video, Heather, and it looks like the fruits of those labors are playing out in terms of the response to your recruitment efforts. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I think we'll turn now over to item 5, the safety plan implementation. Sam's got this one, right?
Yes.
Great, Sam, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Transit Advisory Committee. This is Samuel Short, the safety manager with Mountain Line. So as outlined in previous progress reports, the Mountain Line Board approved Mountain Line's safety plan in November of 2020. So since that time, we've been focusing on implementing that plan throughout Mountain Line. So one of the main focuses in the safety plan is the employee safety reporting program. So this program is meant to give employees and customers multiple ways to report safety and security concerns. And it pretty much boils down to as many as we can get or think of. So if anybody has any more ideas that they didn't hear me mention, please email me or let me know afterwards. But that is one of the main focuses in the safety plan. So one of these ways is the safety committee. So we actually formed our safety committee in August of 2019 in preparation because we knew this plan was actually being required and was coming the following year. So we formed it a year early. And this safety committee is made up of employees from throughout the entire organization, regardless of department or division. So that way we have a good, well-rounded committee. We have operations, we have IT, fleet, HR, safety, of course, facilities. Pretty much any department or division in Mountain Line, we have an employee on the safety committee. So that's one of the things we've done to utilize the employee safety reporting program. Next slide, Rhonda, sorry. So another thing that we've done to better our employee safety reporting program is the CSA Now phone app. And I believe I've done a progress report on this earlier this year. But the CSA Now phone app allows employees and customers to report safety and security issues regardless of the time or location. And they can actually geocode themselves when they send the report. And once they send that safety or security report, they send it to our console, which we manage. And then staff at Mountain Line can manage that report and do what we need to do with it. One of the things that we've done recently when we've gone back and tried to evaluate what was working and what wasn't working was we noticed that not a lot of people wanted to download the app onto their phone, especially employees. So recently, the CSA Now folks have sent us several QR codes that we've put on signage that will go on the bus, as well as little small business-like cards that have the QR codes on it. So that way, all the person has to do is use the QR code with their phone, and they don't actually have to download the app to report a safety concern when they're on the bus or pretty much anywhere in town, really, as long as they have the QR code accessible or the app on their phone itself. And then another thing that we've done is we've strategically placed safety and security report forms and the boxes that go with them around Mountain Line's property. So employees can take a card, they can do it anonymously if they wish, or they can put their name on it and they can write out their concern, drop it in the box at several different locations. And then I will go around and check those boxes weekly, and we will take those to the safety committee. If the concern can wait, if it can't, we will address it immediately. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So this is an example of the bus signage that was given to us by CSA Now. You'll see the little QR code towards the right-hand corner. So all a person has to do without even downloading the app is just use the QR code with their phone, and that will send their comment, concern, or safety or security concern to our console here at Mountain Lion, and then we will address the problem. Next slide, Rhonda. So some more things that we've been doing. We've been giving a board and TAC annual safety report at the end of each fiscal year. So during that report, we outlined such things as accidents per mile traveled, the severity of the accidents, any trends in the accident, whether it be by location or type. And then we also outlined workplace injuries and their types and trends as well. So we've done that 2 fiscal years in a row now, and we continue to want to be able to do that for the board and TAC members. Another thing that we've been doing is training our staff and most recently our leadership team on the safety plan itself, as well as how to identify, assess, and mitigate hazards. We've done that within the last 2 weeks. Also, some things that we've been doing is having open safety discussions in almost all of our meetings, especially the operations meetings. And say, for example, the operator meetings, the first 15 to 20 minutes will be nothing but safety issues. We will give them a safety briefing and then allow each person to go, we'll go around the room individually and let each person say whatever they want to say in regards to safety or security concerns. And it's pretty much an open forum, and they feel safe and comfortable to tell me and their coordinator whatever it is that they feel is a safety or security issue. Also, within the last year, we had a FTA triennial review, which was conducted by an FTA auditor. And one of the things that they did look at during that triennial review was our safety plan. And they did find we had no findings on our safety plan, as well as anything else they looked at, fortunately for us. Next slide, please. I believe that is all I have. Do I have any questions?
Thank you, Sam. Any questions for Sam? Really appreciate the progress report, Sam, and the update on the effort. I'm wondering, just real quick, from a statistic standpoint, are we seeing desirable outcomes? Are we seeing a reduction in our accidents? And I mean, I love the safety minute updates. I really do. I think I've always expressed appreciation for those. I see value in it. But how are you guys able to track the benefits of these efforts? Thanks.
So I've been the one that's keeping track of the accidents, and I would say that our serious accidents have been reduced within the last 3 years. I have seen a increase in accidents that occur in construction zones. And almost all of our accidents, I think there was just one serious accident last year, and all of the rest were very minor. And a good portion of them, if I remember right, close to half, were in construction zones where a construction delineator was tapped with the mirror, or the construction zone lane that was coned off was too short, so they drove through it anyway and hit their mirror on somebody else's mirror. Almost all of them are those types of accidents.
Wow. Okay, great. Not great that you have those accidents, but on the serious accidents, the reduction, I mean, that's significant. So appreciate that.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. I don't see anybody else wanting to jump in. I guess we're down to progress reports, and we've got a couple of minutes. I don't know if we skipped that. Heather, what's your thinking?
Generally, we don't present on progress reports. So I do have a couple of current events if we want to jump all the way down to that, because I did not include that in the staff report I did not include a staff report in the packet as I would normally. So I do have a couple of announcements that I can share if you will entertain me for a few moments.
Please, thank you.
I want to let you know Mountain Line is launching the Mountain Line Go, a pilot program on November 1st, or we did, and it is our new microtransit service in the Huntington corridor. Passengers can book a trip in real time via our new Mountain Line Go mobile app or by calling Mountain Line. The service is being provided Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on weekends and holidays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Rides are $1 and they can be paid via cash as they board the vehicle or by credit card in the app itself. We did receive a one-time funding grant for this pilot program, and we'll be using the information that we gained from the pilot to determine what's next for microtransit in Mountain Line's program of services. Mountain Line is also partnering with the city and the county and Flagstaff Family Food Center to host a Stuff the Bus food drive on November 13th at the University Plaza Way Safeway grocery store. So please stop by and help these important agencies with this important food drive. Staff has completed and submitted our annual National Transit Database report. The report includes 19 forms of data from across our agency, and we couldn't have done it without Busy Collins's leadership. And I want to thank the staff who supported Busy from our various divisions: Josh Stone, Estella Hollander, Jim Wagner, Randy Biles, Sean Gregg, Jeremiah McVicker, Mark Attenberger, and Robert Hilbers. Definitely, that's a heavy lift. It took the entire team to get it done. I won't go over the countless data points that are entered. And lastly, our wellness team has kicked off the Aerobic Winter Challenge, and we have 38 team members and family members signed up to participate. That's about 1/3 of our employees participating in the Aerobic Challenge. And I want to congratulate Rhonda Cashman and Lynn Hill, who are leading the effort and really have spent the time to make connections with, I think, every staff member here to encourage their participation in this important wellness event. And with that, those are my very brief current events.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate that. Any questions for Heather? We're at 11:58 according to my clock. We've got, I don't see any questions for you, Heather. So just you did a great job in that update on current events. Down to item 6, just heads up, right, Heather? We do not have a meeting scheduled for December. So we've got a bit of a break there for the holidays. Hope you enjoy your time. Our next meeting will be January 6th, 2022, as we open the new year. Any comments or questions about that schedule?
Happy holidays, everybody.
Well said. Happy holidays, everybody. Hearing none, Heather, I think we're ready to adjourn. So unless somebody pops their hand up real quick, meeting is adjourned, and it's 11:59. Thanks, Heather. And
Thank you all. Appreciate you. Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Take
Holidays,
care,
everybody.
everybody.